Yeah, definitely $100. Let's start the bidding at $100 for sure. With today, Mother's Day, we invited Kathy Jensen to come and deliver a message that's coming right from her heart, right from the scriptures, out to all of us. And so I'm honored to introduce Kathy Jensen. Kathy, go ahead.
Good morning. I'm Kathy. I'm a mom. And I'm here to celebrate Mother's Day with you, just to celebrate how special moms are. I've been called a lot of things in my life, but the word I've probably been called the most is mom. And in the past couple of years, I've added a couple of other names, mother-in-law and grandma. Baby Bailey was born just 7 weeks ago, and he is my favorite boy. Together, Kyle and I have raised 4 beautiful daughters. Though some might not agree, I do not consider myself to be a helicopter mom. Was I present and in their business? Yes. Did I control their every move? I don't think so. We set healthy boundaries in our family that our girls were comfortable in, and if they wandered outside of those boundaries, which they sometimes did, there were consequences. But firm and kind, that was my motto, and that's how I remained in control. When managing a home, managing a career, and just in general, I like to be in control of my circumstances. I like things to go my way. I grew up with 4 brothers, so I learned from a young age that by using certain personality traits that God blessed me with, I could usually get my way. That helped me think that I was in control. I can relate feeling out of control to riding a roller coaster. So let's talk about roller coasters. First, I hate them. Second, it doesn't matter if they're baby roller coasters or big, giant, scary roller coasters, I still hate them. Basically, I hate all amusement park rides. My girls can attest that I'm the mom who gets on a ride and screams, "Let me off!" at the top of my lungs. But sometimes I've been convinced, against my better judgment, to give it a try just one more time. So hoping that this time it's not going to be so bad. So I get on the roller coaster, and at first it seems fun, get settled in, and slowly it starts. And then a little anticipation starts to build in my stomach, an adrenaline rush, and we start going faster and faster. And then my least favorite part, you know this well, is when you're going up the hill, chug, 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 because we know what goes up must come down, right? And when that happens, when we hit the top of the climb and the roller coaster goes plummeting to my near death, they tell you to raise your hands up and just enjoy the ride. But I'm not doing that. When I lose control, when the roller coaster is plummeting down, I grab the bar in front of me and I hold on for dear life and I scream. I hold on to the bar because it makes me feel like I'm a little bit more secure. When I should actually let go and trust, I'm grasping onto something that makes me feel like I have control. The truth is, I don't have control at all. Even when I'm hanging on to the bar, the roller coaster is going to continue up and down, whether I'm hanging on or not. You see, I've got this control thing. Sometimes I like to think that I'm the general manager of the universe. And this definitely becomes more pronounced when I'm facing challenging circumstances. Can anyone here relate? Does anyone like to be in control? Well, I have a story to share with you. Let's go back to 2020. Remember it? I don't need to describe to you what happened in our communities and shelter in place, but I'm going to share a little glimpse of what happened in my home behind closed doors. And this is a story that very few close to my heart know, but I'm sharing with special permission today. Partway through the year, I began to notice signs that one of my daughters was struggling emotionally. It started with very small things, like staying in her room, isolating more than usual, which was really challenging because our kids were already kept out of school. She wasn't allowed to spend time with her friends. She began to skip meals, take tiny bites of food, play with the food on her plate. I've never struggled with food. I've struggled with body image, but not food. So this was new to me. When I recognized the signs of a food anxiety and an unhealthy relationship with food, we searched for help. We tried a few different options, different types of help, and thankfully, she was willing to share a little bit with our family PA. But just weeks later, she replaced that habit with something else when we started paying attention to the food. And I believe that God speaks to us in dreams. I have had God speak to me in dreams. And you might find this hard to believe, but one night, I had a dream that my daughter had little tiny cuts on her arms and legs. And I believe that the Holy Spirit was preparing me for what was to come. Because the next morning at church, she fell asleep, she laid her head on my lap, and as she slept, her arm fell and her sleeve came up, and I saw it. There were little tiny cuts. When we got home, I brought her into my room, and she admitted to me that she was harming her body, and I asked her to show me her arms, her legs, her shoulders, her tummy, even her toes. And this was the start of ongoing body checks in the privacy of our bedroom, a way I could monitor and see what was going on. And when we started talking, I took her little face in my hands, and I said, "I love you so much, and I will do anything for you." But my heart was broken. I felt like I'd failed as a mom, that I should have done more. I should have recognized more warning signs. I've tried so hard to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks, especially when it comes to my kids. I was and I still am very, very protective of my kids. But I began to understand, with the help of my counselor, that there were so many things out of control in our world, in my daughter's world, and this was something that she could control. I don't understand self-harm, but I do understand feeling out of control. And I don't like feeling out of control. None of us do. I couldn't speak about what I saw. I absolutely could not utter the words. I wasn't just still, I was frozen. I couldn't speak about it for a couple of reasons. First, my heart hurt so bad for her, and I absolutely could not find words to describe it. I've done my best to protect my kids from hurt and pain, and there it was in front of me. Second, I wanted to protect her. She was hiding it from the world, and I didn't want to expose her to pain and judgment that her precious little heart wouldn't be able to deal with. This whole situation was covered with shame and with fear. And third, I didn't really know what to do. This was new for our family. But God. And one thing I repeated over and over in my head was that I said, "God, I know that you love her more than I do, and I love her a lot." So I found the words to share with my husband and her 3 sisters, as well as a couple of their boyfriends. My girls are very close, and they all became super prayerful and supportive. And I gave one of my daughters permission to share with my parents, as they are also very close to our girls. But I asked my parents that they not call me and talk to me about it. Because again, I couldn't speak. When my dad learned what had been going on, he texted me and asked if he could come over and hug her, and I said no. I didn't want her to know that I had shared this pain with other people. And I absolutely cringe when I say that. Because aren't we supposed to help others carry their pain? I also messaged a couple of my close friends. I gave a very vague description of our problem, but I opened that door a tiny little crack so that others could be praying. Because you see, even when a little bit of light is exposed to dark places, darkness loses. I took her to our family PA, and when we got to the appointment, my daughter told me that she didn't want me in the room with her. She didn't want me in the room with her. This had never happened before. I had always been in the room, always. But I waited in the waiting room in silence for over an hour as my friend and my precious girl spoke to one another, and I was still. We started counseling, and the same thing happened. Mom, wait out here. And I honored her request, but I have to be honest, I did feel hurt. I felt like she didn't trust me, and I felt angry because I'm a mom. She's a minor. Don't I have a right to be in the room with her? But I honored her. That's what she wanted, and it was okay. I was still. We were in weekly appointments with a PA and a counselor, and it was always the same thing. Mom, stay in the waiting room. And as I leaned into God during this time, there was a scripture that became really meaningful to me. It's in 2 Kings chapter 4, if you'd like to turn to that chapter in your Bibles. We're going to start with verse 8. One day Elisha went to the town of Shunem. A wealthy woman lived there, and she urged him to come to her home for a meal. After that, whenever he passed that way, he would stop there for something to eat. She said to her husband, I am sure this man who stops in from time to time is a holy man of God. Let's build a small room for him on the roof and furnish it with a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. Then he will have a place to stay whenever he comes by. One day, Elisha returned to Shunem, and he went up to this upper room to rest. And he said to his servant Gehazi, tell the woman from Shunem I want to speak to her. And when she appeared, Elisha said to Gehazi, tell her, we appreciate the kind concern you have shown us. What can we do for you? Can we put in a good word for you to the king or to the commander of the army? No, she replied, my family takes good care of me. Now, the woman, she wasn't looking for anything in return. She just wanted to bless this man. And she could do that by preparing a room for him. So, verse 14, later Elisha asked Gehazi, what can we do for her? And Gehazi replied, well, she doesn't have a son, and her husband is an old man. Call her back again, Elisha told him. And when the woman returned, Elisha said to her as she stood in the doorway, next year at this time, you will be holding a son in your arms. No, my lord, she cried. Oh, man of God, don't deceive me and get my hopes up like that. But sure enough, the woman soon became pregnant. And at the time, the following year, she had a son, just as Elisha had said. So this woman, she received a promise from the man of God. And it happened. She had a son. Verse 18 continues. One day, when her child was older, she went out to help his father, who was working with the harvesters. Suddenly, he cried out, my head hurts, my head hurts. And her father said to one of the servants, carry him home to his mother. So the servant took him home, and his mother held him on her lap, but around noontime, he died. She carried him up and laid him on the bed of the man of God. She put him on Elisha's bed, and then she shut the door and she left him there. She then sent a message to her husband, send one of the servants and a donkey so that I can hurry to the man of God and come right back. Why go today, he asked. It's neither a new moon festival nor a Sabbath. But she said, it will be all right. So she saddled the donkey and said to the servant, hurry, don't slow down unless I tell you to. I want you to notice, this woman took charge. She didn't go around the community rallying up her troops and all of her friends and start a social media post asking for prayers and good vibes, but she went straight to the one who could help, the prophet, and she did not stop along the way. We know that this woman was riding a donkey, and that donkey is led by a person, so they could not move fast, but still they went. And it's likely this trip didn't even happen in one day, but she went to the one person she knew who could help. So verse 25 continues. As she approached the man of God at Mount Carmel, Elisha saw her in the distance. He said to Gehazi, look, the woman from Shunem is coming. Run out to meet her and ask her, is everything all right with you, your husband, and your child? Yes, the woman told Gehazi, everything is fine. Mom is controlling the dialogue here, right? But when she came to the man of God at the mountain, she fell on the ground before him, caught hold of his feet. Gehazi began to push her away, but the man of God said, leave her alone. She's deeply troubled, but the Lord has not told me what it is. And then she said to him, did I ask you for a son, my Lord? And didn't I say, don't deceive me and get my hopes up? I picture this woman just at the feet of this prophet, just crying, you promised me. You promised me, and now my child is dead. And verse 29 continues, then Elisha said to Gehazi, get ready to travel, take my staff and go. Don't talk to anyone along the way. Go quickly and lay the staff on the child's face. But the boy's mother said, and she's taking charge here. As surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I won't go home unless you go with me. So Elisha returned with her. Gehazi hurried on ahead and laid the staff on the child's face, but nothing happened. There was no sign of life. He returned to meet Elisha, and he told him, the child's still dead. And then when Elisha arrived, the child was indeed dead, lying there on the prophet's bed, on his bed. He went in alone and shut the door behind him and prayed to the Lord. And this is where I want you to take note, because this is the part that really stuck out to me. Mom wasn't in the room. Elisha shut the door, and Mom waited in the waiting room. She was outside. She was pacing, she was praying, and she was trusting what was happening behind that door. She gave up control. She didn't throw a fit. She didn't manipulate the situation. She had done what she could, and she let go because she had faith. And then verse 34 continues. Then he lay down on the child's body, placing his mouth on the child's mouth, his eyes on the child's eyes, and his hands on the child's hands. And as he stretched out on him, the child's body began to grow warm again. Elisha got up, walked back and forth across the room once, then stretched himself on again with the child. And this time, the boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. This child came back to life while Mom was in the waiting room. God was touching that child, and he was working a miracle behind a closed door. And verse 36 continues, then Elisha summoned Gehazi, call the child's mother, he said, and when she came in, Elisha said, here, take your son. And she fell at his feet and bowed before him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Then she took her son in her arms and carried him downstairs. God was at work. He brought a child back to life. I love this story. It's beautiful. Mom took control, but she knew when to let go and let God work. When I found myself in this scary, unknown situation, I tried to control it. As I said, sometimes I think that I am the general manager of the universe. I like to be in control. With all that was happening in our family, I controlled the dialogue. I controlled who knew because I wanted to protect her and our family. But in doing so, I also ended up controlling the dialogue of those who wanted to help because I blocked them out too. And I built a wall, and I felt safe inside that wall where I controlled the dialogue. But within that wall, the dialogue in my mind, now that was another story. I could not shut that up. And I felt like I had failed. I felt that I had missed the warning signs. I felt that I was a fake, a bad mom. I thought all the negative things I had said in my life about my own body had passed on to my daughter, and it was my fault. I blamed myself. And it was very, very hard for me to control the negative thoughts in my mind. So I controlled my daughter's environment. We had daily check-ins. I had the scale. I even cleaned out her room of anything that I deemed to be garbage for her mind or heart. And after I cleaned her room, I would walk around it and pray blessings over that space, and I would even tuck Bible verses under her mattress. I controlled the amount of time she could spend in her room, not allowing her to be in there very long by herself. I controlled who she spent time with, careful that she would only be surrounded by kind, supportive people. And I would even pull family aside and say, don't you dare say anything to her about this, because I was trying to protect her. Even as she began to do better, there were times I was so fearful I had missed something. I would go into her room early in the morning and make sure she was breathing, to make sure she was alive, because I was letting fear control my thoughts. And by doing so, I was showing God that I didn't completely trust him in the process that he was taking us through. But even when I was fearful, I prayed. When I couldn't find the words, I would just say, God, help. I prayed that she'd be surrounded by people who would love her and encourage her. As I mentioned, our family is very close. Her sisters were very supportive and loving. And I wondered how kids who don't have a supportive family deal with something like this. And it absolutely breaks my heart. I know for a fact that God places people in our lives to help us in our most difficult seasons. When my daughter was hurting, he brought a professional in, a very special PA, who is my friend, and I trust, and she trusts, and who took time with her behind a closed door to have intimate conversations, to have a place where tears could flow and healing could happen. Like the mother who sat outside the door, I did the same. And at each appointment, I sat outside and I prayed, God, bring her back to life. And that PA always took extra time with her. Often, we were the last appointment of the day. She would stay after hours to meet with my daughter. Her staff would stay after hours to meet with my daughter, even though I knew they had families of their own that they needed to get home to. I told my friend, thank you, and she said to me, Kathy, I'm just doing my job. And I'm like, no, you aren't just doing your job. You are bringing light into a dark place, and she was bringing my girl back to life. My daughter started making new friends at school. These are different friends that she had when she was little. But these were new friends who made her smile, and they brightened her day, and it was an absolute gift. There were teachers at school who encouraged her and looked out for her. One in particular didn't even have her in class, but she allowed my daughter to come in during her prep time, which was likely the only time during the day. She didn't have any students to deal with, but she let my girl come in there, and it was a safe place, and it was quiet, and she opened up her heart to encouragement and conversation for my daughter. This is above and beyond. And you know what? She didn't even know the depth of what my daughter had been walking through. She didn't know how much her kindness was essential in this healing process. I know that God sent her. He was using her, even if she didn't really know that. You see, sometimes the words we say, the conversations we have, the kind gesture we make, the time we take with someone could mean the world to that other person. And I often wonder who I will meet in heaven one day who will say, it was because of you that my life was changed, and I might not even have a clue. When I began to let go of control, I could see how God was working. I began to rest knowing that healing was taking place. Healing could happen outside the walls of our home. God was breathing life into a situation, into a life and a heart behind a closed door. And God has gently shown me that through the pain, He was always in control, even when I was gripping tightly, thinking that I was. When I stopped letting fear control the dialogue in my mind and my heart and my actions, I began to let go of what I was gripping so tightly. I am very happy to report that my daughter is doing exceptionally well. She is happy and healthy. She has not self-harmed in over 2 years. She is one of the most resilient young women I know. She is a different kid than she was 2 years ago. She is a light. She's my hero, and she is tough. She will stand up for the underdog. She's very sensitive to those around her, not afraid to call out when someone says things that are not kind or hurtful to herself or someone else. She's funny, creative, smart, she's kind, and most importantly, she's not afraid to ask for help when she needs it. She doesn't keep things hidden in dark places. She let the light in just to crack and darkness lost because God is in her heart. Months after that first dream about her, I had a new dream, and in this dream, I saw her face, which had fresh flowers and beautiful buds growing from the top of her head. I know it sounds strange, you guys, but it was absolutely beautiful. This dream was about her mind and her heart, and God showed me He was transforming her by the renewing of her mind. He was bringing new ways of thinking, new life, and God reminded me that her faith roots are deep. She has a relationship with Him, and she has known Jesus since the day she was born. Today I ask you, take every worry, every grief, every pain, and every cause for shame and lay it down. Lay it down at the feet of Jesus. It takes a lot of energy to try to remain in control. Worry and anxiety, they can be overwhelming and exhausting. We have to let go and lay them down. Because when we learn to rest in him and trust in him and stop fueling that fear that is right in front of our faces, we can lift our heads up and see that God is working. As I said, when things are hidden, light can't get in. But when darkness is exposed to light, darkness loses. God wants to take away that shame, that fear, that darkness, and he wants to rub his healing balm on your heart and on your mind, and he wants to shine his light in those dark places. For me, I thought I was in control when I kept this hidden, when I built a wall around myself and our family. I thought I could figure it out on my own. But when I opened up to a few people very close to me to share my pain, when I admitted that I was struggling, it was a way of letting go of control. Because sometimes when we're in the middle of the storm, it's really hard to see what's going on around us. So having someone else on the outside with a little bit different perspective can be very helpful. And please know that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a strength. And now, in honor of Mother's Day, I want to take a minute to speak directly to the moms, young and old, the stepmoms, the grandmas, the great-grandmas, the aunts, the sisters, and even those who are like a mom to someone. You are seen. You are heard. You are loved. It's hard. There are days I feel like a failure. There are times I feel so frustrated. Give yourself a little grace. Ask for help. The roller coaster is going to keep on going, whether you're throwing your hands up in the air or hanging on tightly, just like the ups and downs of life. Trust God. Raise your weary head and believe God's promises. Your children are your gift. They are your reward. The jewels in your crown. God created them, and he loves them even more than you do. And I know, like me, you love your kids a lot. Remember this, there is no one way to be a perfect mom, but there are a million ways to be a good mom. So be encouraged today. And to everyone listening today, I want you to think of something you are trying to control. I want you to consider what you're grasping onto as that roller coaster starts moving. What shame, what fear, what dialogue, what situations are you holding on to? Picture yourself grabbing hold of that bar, gripping, holding on tightly. As we close today, I'd like each of you to put your hands out like this. Ask God to show you what you're gripping. Now, please close your eyes with your hands out in front of you. Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it the dialogue? Is it an addiction, an illness, a child, a relationship, your future, your past? Open your eyes up. I want you to open your hands and let that go. Lay it down at the feet of Jesus, because what you've done as you turn your hands over is opened your hand and your heart to what God wants to do. You've opened your hands to his blessings, his gifts, his peace, his favor, and he is at work, and he is good. Whatever you are walking through, wherever you stand, wherever you are, God is near and he is for you. In the heartache and in the highlands, God is faithful.